Hey guys, welcome to Turkish Star Files. All the details are right here, so pull up a chair, turn the volume up, and don't forget to subscribe and share before we dive in, because tonight we're opening a chapter every fan has tiptoed around for years. Is the frost between Barış Baktas and Yağmur Yüksel finally thawing, or are we just reading way too much into a few carefully placed likes and whispers from hallways where cameras never reach? Let's rewind to where the echo began. There was a time when the set lights adored them, Barış with that unforced charm, Yağmur with that luminous poise, both threading through scenes with an ease that made directors relax and audiences fall hard. The project they led together, long days, longer nights, grew a mythology of its own. Crew members spoke of a respectful rhythm between them, a silent understanding that made even the most stubborn dialogue land soft. Behind the camera, there was warmth. In front, electricity. And then, as the final scene wrapped and the clapperboard fell for the last time, came that silence, too sudden, too sharp. No press conference, no tidy statement. Just the end of a show and the start of a rumor factory that didn't sleep. What happened in that gap? Depending on who you asked, it was the grind, overlapping schedules, exhausted nerves, too many promises made to too many people. Others swore it was a single misread word on a busy day that spiraled, not because it was unforgivable, but because neither side had the time, or maybe the courage, to sit down and fix it. The story curdled into something brittle. And for years, whether by pure coincidence or careful choreography, Barış and Yağmur floated through the same industry like neighboring constellations, bright but separate. Red carpets? They kept a respectful distance. Award nights? A nod from opposite sides of the room. Social media? A silence so total it felt deliberate, like a clean line drawn with a ruler. Fast forward to this week's swirl. It began as a whisper from a friend of a friend, one of those off-duty Sundays when the city yawns and the famous let their shoulders drop. A mutual friend, a small gathering, a private room in a place that tries hard not to matter. That's where the whisper says it happened. A real conversation, not a tossed-off hello, the first in years. No entourage to choreograph the angle, no manager to shape a subtext. Just two people with a shared past, and time finally slowing down long enough to hear each other. The word trickled out that they talked about the mess none of us ever saw, the raw edges of that last shoot, the late nights, the unwanted advice from people who stood too close with too little context. They swapped stories, they corrected assumptions, and where a nod had been, something softer took its place. And then, like a pair of breadcrumbs leading every fan straight into delirium, came the double tap. Tiny, almost invisible unless you were looking right at it, Barış liking a post on Yağmur's feed, a sunlit frame that said nothing and everything. Hours later, a mirror image, Yağmur leaving her digital fingerprint on one of his updates. It's the smallest theater the internet knows, and yet you could hear the gasp from here. These were people who had edited each other out of their online lives with surgeon-level precision. Even a shadow of attention felt like a bell ringing in an empty church. Add to that the charm of coincidence, or is it careful scripting, in their recent interviews. No names, not a single direct reference, but the overlaps were uncanny. Both of them talking about how time eats anger for breakfast, how you don't realize how heavy a grudge is until your hands are free. Sometimes you grow older, one of them said, letting the words hang, and you see that silence can be a mistake. Another echo elsewhere, I wish we had talked back then. The tabloids sliced and rearranged those lines all week, and fans did the rest, shaking them into a fit that looked a lot like reconciliation. So what is it? Are we witnessing a human correction, a mature handshake offered across a better lit room? Or is the air humming with a different kind of possibility, one that's got producers already drafting emails with subject lines all in caps? There's chatter, nothing you could stake a career on, but chatter nonetheless, about a new project that might lift them back into each other's frames. A script allegedly making the rounds, a director who loves a good second chance, and a timetable that would put them back under the same ceiling before summer forgets itself. Too perfect? Maybe. Too early to dismiss? Definitely. Before you sprint to conclusions, here's what the inside crowd swears by. After that first breakthrough, they didn't slam the door shut. They kept it tidy, contained, careful. Shared spaces have been less awkward. Friend group dinners where the table is bigger than the past. Events where they don't orbit each other like wary planets, but also don't sell a fantasy they aren't ready to live. It's not a performance, it's more like a ceasefire with soft edges, a return to plain civility that somehow feels braver than any grand gesture. That's why their fans are calling it a grown-up truce, a slow-breathing normalization that doesn't need to trend to be real. If you listen closely to the quieter sources, the ones who don't post DMs as trophies, you'll hear a similar melody. Both of them, it's said, have hit milestones that changed their view of what matters. The grind taught them endurance, the applause taught them patience, and the quiet moments in between taught them how easy it is for third parties to make a small soreness feel terminal. Once you notice the pattern, the puzzle solves itself. The long hours had teeth, the misunderstandings were fed by voices that didn't deserve microphones, and over time the story got taller than the truth. You can sense what's different now. The urgency is gone. What remains is cleaner, simpler. Through all this, the quotes that keep surfacing tell their own truth. Friends say Yağmur has been frank in private, that silence, once her sanctuary, sometimes betrayed her. That speaking late is still better than never. And if the whispers are right, Barış has been equally direct, not with big speeches, but with the kind of sentence that lands because it's small. We should have talked, we should have listened, we should have asked one more question on that long night we thought we'd forget. These aren't press lines, they're the sentences you say to yourself first. And what about the fans, the people who've kept screenshots in dusty folders, the ones who memorize the color of a coat in a decade-old photo? They're split in the way that only love splits you. One side is building a dream board, the reunion project, the premiere where they stand shoulder to shoulder and the room flickers. The other side is sober, radiant in its own way, they're rooting for peace, for two grown professionals to rewrite an ending without needing a camera to capture it. In comments, you can see the timelines crossing. Hands shaking across disagreements, strangers meeting in the mid-aisle to agree that dignity looks good on both of them. Of course, no modern story is complete without the measured distance of people who know how fast sparks can become fires. That's why, in public, their approach to the press has been disciplined. No confirmations, no denials, just a refusal to let the past be repackaged and resold. Some say that if you don't deny, you're confessing. Those closer and say it's something smarter. A decision not to let their lives be turned into a choose-your-own adventure written by other people. The calm is intentional. The silence isn't a void, it's a boundary. Still, there's a sweetness in the air that's hard to ignore. You can see it in the way recent conversations have landed. When Yağmur says she doesn't want to hold grudges anymore, the line doesn't feel crafted, it feels practiced, lived. When she talks about seeing her history from a different angle, you can't help but wonder if that wider lens includes the stretch of time she shared with Barış, those nights under stage lights when tomorrow was still a secret. And when Barış speaks softer than he used to, when the combative edges are filed down to something more reflective, you feel the hint of someone who set a few bags down. Now here's the bit that makes insiders nod with relief, none of this is lopsided. The meeting was mutual, the timing mutual, the decision mutual. A friend was a bridge, but both of them walked across. No one surrendered a grudge to win a headline. They both decided that grown people can fix things without turning the fixing into theater. And that may be the most romantic part, ironically, two people choosing not to compete over who apologizes better, but instead agreeing that a better story beats a louder one. Which brings us to the old question with new clothes. How deep was the original wound? Was it a moment that, with time and distance, looked smaller than it felt? Or was it big enough to justify the years of cool shade they offered each other? The answer is probably boring. It was exactly what happens to many of us in less glamorous rooms. Communication failed in slow motion, feelings got misfiled, and the myth grew taller as memory shrank. What matters is that every sign points to a rewrite, not of history, but of attitude. they aren't out to erase what happened. They're out to file it neatly and let it stay filed. If you're asking what comes next, you're not alone. Agents count calendars for a living, and fans count days for love. Maybe they sign on to something together, a taut drama that lets their restraint glow, or a romantic venture that flips their history into art. Maybe they take it even slower, choosing casual crossings that tell their own story. A smile at a gala, a nod by a stage door, the world learning to read subtext without forcing a subtitle. Either way, we're already witnessing something worth saving, two careers that learned from a bruise and chose grace. Listen closely to the buzz around the usual haunts, the studios with the heavy doors, the cafes where writers steal glances at recognizable shadows. The whispers say the right phone calls have been made, and that the right rooms are at least curious. If a script lands in both their hands and the timing is kind, we could see them stand under the same light again, not because the internet begged for it, but because the story asks for it and their hearts don't object. Until then, the smallest gestures will keep us fed. A like here. A polite laugh there. Nothing explosive, everything deliberate. Before we close, let's not overlook the most human part, regret that doesn't demand a spotlight. When private circles repeat that Yağmur has admitted silence can wound, she is not performing. She is learning out loud. And when those same circles say that Barış has wished for an old conversation to have arrived on time, he's not auditioning. He's owning a delay. In a business that rewards declarations, they are choosing subtler verbs. They are choosing to repair. So, is this the calm before a storm of headlines or the quiet hum of two former colleagues writing a softer middle? The truth is both possibilities are beautiful. What matters, for tonight at least, is acknowledging how rare it is to watch public figures refuse to let a story define them at their youngest moment. You grow, the story grows with you, and if you're lucky, it grows kinder. That's the current. That's the news. That's the hush we've been hearing if we stop forcing the volume knob to the right. And with that, you've been watching Turkish Star Files, where we trade in mysteries that glow rather than burn. If you felt the warmth of this one, tap subscribe, share with the friend who still keeps that behind-the-scenes photo saved, and stay close. Because whether this ends with a marquee blazing both their names or simply a lasting piece that needs no applause, it will be worth the wait. Sometimes the best reunions begin with nothing more dramatic than a conversation and the courage to like a picture you used to scroll past. Sometimes the grown-up ending is the most satisfying twist of all. Stay tuned, stay kind, and keep your notifications on. We're watching the quiet, and the quiet is talking.